Okay, here we are. So YouTube was giving me problems of getting started, so hence the delay, but here we are. So today we are going to talk about the importance of checking on your investments. And I know that might sound kind of silly, but after working with hundreds of women over the last, I guess 8 years or so, you'd be surprised as to how many women and men do not look at their investments. So it sounds crazy, but it is a thing. And so I have found over the years there are basically three reasons why people don't check on their investments. And so we'll kind of talk about that now, and we'll talk about why it is important to actually check on your investments. So, the first reason why people tend to ignore and not look at their investments is they are afraid of the results, right? They figure if they just don't look at it, ignorance is bliss, right? And while I get that, that is counterintuitive to building wealth. And so it's really important to break out of that mindset. Now, there are a few reasons or a few ways to break out of that. We'll talk more about that in the live, but ignoring your investments isn't going to help you, right? It's really going to put yourself in a place where you're leaving things up to chance, and that's a dangerous game to play, right? If you are investing or putting money away for your future, whether it's for future you, for your children's future, whatever you are investing for, you can't leave it up to luck and happenstance. So we have to move away from this passive way of investing and be more proactive because, again, as I said before, no one's coming to save us. No one's coming to save you. No one's coming to save me. So ignoring your investments isn't going to help you, and it could actually cause you to lose money because you really have no idea what's going on, and you could be missing out on the opportunity to make money as well. We'll talk more about that later, but again, this is one of the reasons why people don't look at their investments. Now, the other reason why people ignore their investments is I kind of talked about it just now, but they're hoping for the best. They feel as if, well, if I'm putting money away, then that should be enough, right? I'm doing more than most because a lot of people aren't investing. They're not putting money away into a 401k. They're not putting money away into an IRA. So they feel as if, well, if I'm doing something, it's better than nothing. And so if I don't look at it, well, it should be okay. And back to my first point, that is a dangerous game to play. You're leaving your financial future up to chance. And by doing that, you are not giving yourself a fair fight. And what I mean by that is when you are ignoring your investments, you literally have no idea what's going on. You don't know if your investments are doing well, if they're doing poorly, and most importantly, do you need to make any changes? And that is the one thing that you're not doing if you're not looking at it, right? You can change what you don't acknowledge. And so again, this is one of the reasons why people don't look at their investments. Now, the third reason, I think this is the one that really hits home for many people. And this one is the biggest reason why people don't look at their investments. And it is they don't understand investing, right? They know they're putting money away into this account, but outside of that, they really have no clue what's going on. They don't understand what they are invested in currently. They don't know why they picked or they don't know why they have the investments that they have. And so, because of their lack of knowledge, their lack of education, they just don't look at their investments. It kind of goes back to point two and three. They're hoping for the best and they're afraid of the results. So, they just don't look. They feel, well, I'm putting money away, something good should happen, and I'll look at it later. And later never comes. And so these are why people don't look at their investments. So just to do a recap, they are afraid of the results. They're hoping for the best. And the biggest reason is they don't even understand investing. So they don't know what they're looking at when they open their portfolio. So they're logged into their 401k. All they see is a bunch of numbers and charts, percentages, and that's it. They don't really know what they're looking at. And so they don't understand what they're looking at. They feel as if, well, what's the point of looking at it if I don't understand it? And all three reasons are dangerous. Hey Yolanda, how are you? Welcome, welcome. And so that is a dangerous game to play. And so while you might not understand investing, that's definitely a thing, but you can't sit in a place of ignorance, right? You have to now be more proactive in your financial future. As I mentioned before, no one's coming to save you and no one's coming to save me. And so while investing in itself is great, I'm so glad that people are doing it. We have to kind of take it one step further. Now, I'm not saying you have to understand how to read charts. I'm not saying you have to do these deep analyses or anything like that, but you need to understand the basics, right? The basic foundation of investing. So that way you feel more comfortable about where your money is invested currently. And two, what should you invest in the future? Whatever you have right now in your portfolio might not be the be all end all. There may be things that you're not invested in now that you should invest in the future. And as new things come on the horizon, whether it's new industries, new companies, new ways to invest, you want to be able to be in a place of you're making a sound decision of whether or not you should invest in this thing or not. So one good example is crypto, right? Crypto didn't exist, let's say 30, 40 years ago, right? But it is now a thing. But if you don't understand it, one, you shouldn't invest in it, right? But you should try to understand the basics and then understand whether or not you should make the investment. And so these are the things that we have to kind of break out of. But I get it, right? When it comes to investing in money, it makes you feel vulnerable. It makes you feel anxious, and you're overwhelmed at times, right? And all those feelings are valid. So this is why I always say meet yourself where you are so you can start learning, right? We all learn differently. We all have different capacities of learning because we're spread so thin, but you have to start somewhere. So it could be something as a simple book, a podcast, following this YouTube channel, right? There are simple steps you can take to help yourself begin to learn. You can't just sit in ignorance and just say, well, I don't know, and leave it there, because that's kind of counterintuitive to building wealth. The only way to wealth is to be proactive and to educate yourself. Those are the two components that are super important. And you don't have to understand everything today. You can become a little bit more sophisticated as time goes, right? So you kind of could be at level one, right? And then you move up to level two, and you slowly but surely become more sophisticated. But you have to start somewhere. So I do have an ebook called Stock Market Investing for Beginners. I'll put a link in the caption when this video is over. But it's a great way to help you begin to learn about investing. And I do break it down in a way that's very simple and very easy to understand. When it comes to finance, or any career field, we all have a way of speaking, right? We have our jargon, whether you're in the medical field, whether you're a lawyer, or, right? Whatever field you're in, you have your own language. And sometimes that language can be confusing or feel complicated to the non-expert person. Use this ebook to break things down so the average person can understand, so that way they can begin to start their investing journey. Or if you've already started, you can now feel more confident. And that's the one thing about investing that people tend to have a misconception about. No one has all of the answers. No one knows everything, right? And you could make a bad investment. You could also make a great investment. But the people who are good at, and when I say good, I put that in air quotes, people who are good at investing, they're doing it from a place of education. They're doing it from a place of experience, and they feel equipped to make those decisions. Whereas most people, they're guessing, right? They're kind of just picking this thing, picking that thing based on name recognition, based on recommendations from family and friends, but they haven't done research truly to know whether or not that investment is a good decision. And so when it comes to that research thing that I'm talking about, that is where people tend to feel overwhelmed. They have analysis paralysis. And so what I will say is investing can be as simple or as complicated as you want it to be. Again, you can start with the basic bare bone minimums, right? Understand, does this stock pay dividends? What is the current stock price? What is this industry? Do I understand the industry? Maybe you want to look at their financials, right? But you have to find a simple way in the beginning to vet this investment before you make it. And I always use the analogy of going through a job interview. So no one hands you a job. That no one just says, here, you're hired. They vet you first, right? They take your application, they look at your resume, they put you through a few rounds of interviews. They might then do a background check, a credit check. They look for references. Then they offer you the job, right? So this is this company's protocol of vetting you as a candidate. So you as an investor need to vet these companies or any assets before you make the investment. And that's where people are missing the mark. Um, Again, start simple and then you can get more sophisticated as you go along. And once you are equipped to vet these companies, now you feel more confident as you're making future decisions. You can now open your 401k and feel like you have a good understanding of what you are invested in, why you made the investment, and should you make any changes. And so when you're not checking on your investments, you're leaving everything up to chance. And again, a lot of it stems from the lack of knowledge of what investing is about and how it all works. Now, when it comes to checking your investments, first thing, how often should you check it, right? That's the one question I do get a lot. So that really depends on how you operate as an investor and what your time capacity is, right? I myself look at my investments every day. That could be a bit much for most people. But I would say at a bare minimum, you should be logging into your accounts once a quarter. So it could be on the first day of the first month of the quarter. So say January 1st, April 1st, so on and so forth. That could be the cadence in which you check your investments. The best thing to do starting out is put a calendar reminder in your phone to set that date of when you should check your investments. Ideally, though, I do recommend checking them once a month, but I find that some people don't like to see the volatility of the stocks going up a lot, going down a lot, especially right now. So once a month might be a bit much. Every day might be a bit much, but at least once a quarter to understand what is going on with your money. I do get asked a lot is, well, what am I checking for? Right? Okay, I can check it once a month, but what am I looking for? Great question. So, a few things. So, one, you want to understand what is your rate of return year to date and then in the last 5 years, right? You kind of look at those metrics. So you want to kind of understand how well is your portfolio doing, but that by itself isn't going to tell you much. So it might say, oh, your portfolio is up 5%. You might say, well, okay, is that good or is that bad? I don't know, right? So you want to then benchmark that against the overall stock market. So like the S&P 500, the NASDAQ, the Dow Jones, any one of those, if you are based here in the US, are good ways to benchmark your portfolio's performance. So if the S&P 500 is up 10%, for example, and year to date, and you are only up 5%, that means your portfolio isn't doing that great. You're kind of behind the average. So from there, you want to understand, well, why is that? Is it your entire portfolio not doing well? Are there certain investments within your portfolio not doing well? And from there, you can kind of decide whether or not you need to make any changes. Now, if your portfolio is higher than the S&P 500, then that's great. That means you're doing above average. So that's my general rule of thumb of how you should benchmark your portfolio's performance. And it's a really simple way to do. You can log on to Yahoo Finance or Google Finance to get those percentages. And actually, in your portfolio, whether it's your 401k or your IRA, they should have that information in there already for you. I know with Fidelity, for example, it'll have your account's rate of return and the other stock market indices, so you can easily see what your performance is versus those other stock markets. So there's that. The next thing you want to check is, well, what are you invested in? Right. And this is what most people also don't understand. I remember doing a few focus group calls with different clients in the last, I think I would say 3 years ago. And many of those women didn't know or understand why they had certain investments in their accounts, whether it was their 401k or their IRA. They picked it because their coworker picked it, or it was the default fund of their 401k, or they talked to family and friends and they helped them pick out these random investments. And so that's a scary place to be, in my opinion. You have given your money to these companies and you don't even know what you're invested in. So we can't change that, right? You've already done that, but now you want to kind of take a step back to understand, well, what am I invested in? What does this company do? What do they make? How are they performing? And you want to understand whether or not you should keep your money in those investments or should you make a change. Now, this is the part that can be a bit time consuming, and so you can't do it all in one day. You might need to do it, piecemeal, to look at one investment, do your research, come back and look at some other ones. And most people don't want to do that. And I get it, but this is your money you're putting in here. Should you spend the time to understand what's going on with your finances, right? Again, it's all up to you. This is your money. It's your finances. If you want to leave it up to happenstance, that's fine. But you should be taking a proactive approach to your investments versus just hoping for the best. The next thing I do recommend checking is to see if the dividends that you are receiving are being reinvested. So whenever you are invested or have purchased a stock that pays dividends, you're going to receive a dividend either once a month, once a quarter, or once a year. If you don't opt in to have those dividends reinvested, that money just sits in a cash account and it's not growing. And I've seen people make this mistake and they really have no idea because they don't know what they don't know. And this means you're receiving this income and it's not being invested and it's not growing. And truthfully, it's losing value because we have inflation. So you want to log into your account and there should be a section in your settings that says manage dividends. And that is where you're going to see the option to have those dividends reinvested in the original security. Now, every company has this option, but again, you have to opt in. It doesn't happen automatically. So once you do that, what this means is, let's say you are invested in McDonald's. So McDonald's, let's just made up numbers here. If dividends of $5, when that $5 comes into your account, your brokerage firm is going to take that $5 and buy a fractional share of McDonald's. So this means your portfolio is going to have an increased number of shares as time goes on. And then as you increase those shares, you then receive more dividends. So it kind of has like a snowball effect. But again, it only is going to happen if you opt into having those dividends reinvested. So those are the three things I do recommend that you check when you're logging into your account. And I guess a quick sidebar, you should always check on your beneficiaries that you have listed in your account. Well, one, have you assigned beneficiaries? That's the first thing you want to understand. Most people don't do it unless directed. So if you have never done that, now is the time. This is going to save your family from having to go through probate court in the event something happens to you. So that's the first thing. Check that you have assigned beneficiaries. But to take it one step further, you want to update and review your beneficiaries from time to time. We go through so many life changes over the years. You might get married, you might get divorced, you're going to have more children, right? And so you want to make sure that the right people will receive this asset in the event you pass away. So you want to make sure you're looking at that. I would say once a year. So for example, if you have a 401k, I would say whenever your company has open enrollment, that should be a great time for you to check on your beneficiaries. Now, you can change your beneficiaries any time of the year. I'm just saying when open enrollment happens, you're kind of already doing things from an admin perspective, right? You're picking out your healthcare plan. Maybe you're signing up for your life insurance policy. You're already doing things related to your job and your benefits. So that could be a great time to kind of remind yourself, hey, let me review my beneficiaries at this time. And also, in checking your beneficiaries, you may also want to check on the percentages. What I mean by that is if you have more than one beneficiary, you can change the allocation of how they receive the investment. So for example, let's say you have two children and you divide it 50-50. You can change it to 60-40 or 70-30 or 0 and 100, right? You can pick any of those combinations. But again, as you go through life changes, these are things you may want to address and change in your, not only your 401k, pretty much everything. Yolanda says, good idea to do that during open enrollment. Yeah, I definitely, so I think it's just a good reminder. It kind of keeps you grounded of, okay, let me go ahead and check on this too. And it could be for everything, your 401ks, your IRAs, your life insurance. At the time of year, you check everything that you own and make sure the right people are going to receive those assets again in the event something happens to you. So we talk about estate planning every now and again. I'll probably should do a separate live on that because estate planning is super important as part of the wealth building process. We tend to only think about making the money and acquiring the assets, but the other part to that equation is how do you keep those assets within the family and they stay and they go to the right people. I've seen so many people who have lost a lot of money due to not having an estate plan. And it's not only about in the event that you pass away, things can happen if you get sick. So, for example, so it's going to be a quick sidebar. So, I did have someone I spoke to on Friday, and she mentioned that when her mother-in-law had passed away, that she had over $400,000 in an IRA, and she also owned a home. They did put the home in a trust, but the IRA was still in her name. And so when she fell sick and had to go into a home, the state forced the family to sell the entire IRA. Because again, if you don't have the finances and if you don't have things set up for long term care and things like that, you have to sell your assets before the federal government or state government will kick in and pay for your expenses. So the family was luckily able to save their home, but the $400,000 in this IRA was gone again because of poor estate planning. So these are the things we have to think about as part of our wealth building journey. How do we pass things down from one generation to another? How do we keep things within the family? And how to make sure people get the things that we are working so hard to acquire? So I'll put that to the side for right now. That was definitely a quick thing that I wanted to talk about. It came up on Friday, and I'm talking to someone, and my heart felt for her because $400,000 is a lot of money. You could do a lot of things with that. You probably can't retire on that, right? Because she's still in her early 50s, but $400,000 can definitely do a lot of great things for your family. But this family lost all of it because of the lack of estate planning. So anyway, that's my little soapbox speech on that. So just to do a quick recap on checking on your investment. So you want to make sure you are understanding your account's performance. You want to make sure you understand what you are invested in. And then thirdly, you want to make sure that you are checking on your beneficiaries and all of that. Now, just to do one more, I guess, well, not recap, but one more thing to mention is when you're looking at what you are invested in, what you want to look for is, do you understand what you have? And also, are you well diversified? I had one client who realized in her portfolio, she was very tech heavy. All she had in her account was Google and Meta and Amazon and Tesla, right? All of the big tech companies, but she didn't have anything else. She didn't have anything in the medical field, travel, energy, clean energy, what else, right? All these other industries, she had no money in these industries. Now, it's okay if you don't want to invest in certain industries. I get that, but you should never be heavily invested in any one industry. And this is why diversifying your portfolio is super important. So, for example, AI is a big deal right now. So we know that it's not going anywhere. AI will continue to be integrated in so many parts of our lives. So for me as an investor, for example, I am now paying attention to more AI based companies. Did I do that 5 years ago? No. But in the last 5 years, AI has grown exponentially, and we're still in the early stages, truthfully. And so for me as an investor, I want to put my money, at least some of it, on that because I want to see the benefit as this industry grows. So that's the other part of checking your investments that's really important. Where are you invested in and where are you not invested in? And that's really going to help you understand how you should proceed going forward. Now, this is a lot that I talked about during today's live, and everything that I mentioned, you can't do in one sitting. It's not possible. You will become overwhelmed. You might get mentally tired, physically tired. There's so much to this, but I would encourage you to just have a money hour once a week in the beginning to kind of start understanding, to kind of get your legs when it comes to investing. Understand what's going on with your money. How can you do better? Can you increase how much you're investing? And just really feel comfortable with what you're doing currently. Now, you ever feel 100% confident? No, because the stock market is still, there's so many things out of our control. So you can never be 100% confident, but you want to feel more confident than not. And the confidence is what's going to make the difference on whether you are going to be good at investing or not. People who equip themselves by reading books, listening to podcasts, watching YouTube videos are the ones who are in a place of constantly learning. And in that learning, they're going to find the gems to help them feel more confident about their investing decisions. Group, they're kind of just winging it, right? They're hoping for the best. They know they're investing and they're like, well, it should do something for me. I just don't know what. So that is not where we want to be. We want to pivot out of that to being more proactive as an investor. So I suggest having that money hour once a week, reviewing your investments. So, and over time, you will feel more confident. And over time, you'll be surprised at how much you can learn just by starting small. Just doing the small baby steps, you will feel more and more confident as time goes on. And then, more importantly, the more you learn, the more you can pass the information on. And this is the part of wealth building and generational wealth that we also don't talk about. Besides the estate planning piece, it's the knowledge piece. The knowledge component is super, super, super important. And you need to be able to teach your loved ones about investing as well. So when they receive these assets, they now are better equipped to handle it and they know what they are actually doing. So the knowledge, the estate planning, and the investing knowledge are the three things you need to really focus on this year if you are really serious about building generational wealth. And with that being said, I think I will wrap up today's live. I will try to go again live on Wednesday. Yeah, Wednesday. I'm trying to go live at least 3 days a week. So I have my Friday weekly recaps where I kind of do a summary of the important things that happened in the previous week when it comes to the financial markets and things like that. I was trying to live stream on both YouTube and Instagram, and that did not go well. So I had to try another platform to figure out how I can do that. I've been going live solely here on YouTube, but I want to make sure my Instagram audience can get this knowledge as well. But I don't want to have to go live twice, if that makes sense. So I will keep researching what platforms I can use to do that. I tried StreamYard on Friday. That did not go well. At least it didn't go well on Instagram. It went well here on YouTube, but Instagram, I couldn't see the comments. People couldn't see that I was sharing my screen, which is counterproductive to what I was trying to do. So I am back at square one. So if anyone has any recommendations, please let me know because I need a platform where I can stream on both YouTube and Instagram, but also see the comments as they come in and also have the ability to share my screen. So hopefully that platform exists. I just need to figure out what that is. So with that being said, have a great night. Have a great night, guys. And we'll talk soon. Take care.